Hi guys, Ali Duzette here. I'm so glad to see you again. It's been a while, but tonight I wanted to talk about all of the interesting stuff that's coming up in 2023. We're about halfway through January and we have a bunch of interesting stuff going on astrologically. And so I wanted to give you a really quick preview of at least the first 6 months of the year. Which has plenty to talk about, but we'll try and get through it really quick so you can just have the big picture overview, and then we'll dig into each different thing in subsequent videos. So the first thing that really stands out to me this year is that Pluto is entering Aquarius in March, and the true date, I believe it is March 23rd. And this is a big deal. The last time that Pluto transited into a sign was in 2008, in the fall of 2008. You may remember something interesting about that time, which would be this massive housing crash and everybody, I don't know, like the economy crashing. I'll say that's the year that I graduated from college and got married. So the crash happened in 2008 in the fall, and then I got married in December of 2008. And so my husband and I were some of those lucky few that got to deal with the trying to find jobs as new college graduates in the aftermath of the economic carnage of this event. But Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, and Capricorn is the sign of the economy. And so is it a coincidence that just as Pluto was entering Capricorn, we saw this massive death and rebirth of the economy? Now, Capricorn governs, how do I put it? The sign that partners with Capricorn is Cancer, and Cancer governs your home. And so although Capricorn is not typically associated with like houses the same way that Cancer is, they're on the same axis. And I think it makes sense that Cancer deals with like the emotional core of the home, and Capricorn would deal with like your mortgage payment for the house that your home is in, right? Like if your house and home are two different things, but hopefully they occupy the same location. Capricorn would govern the money side, and like the role of the house as like the place where people's physical needs are met, the way that Capricorn, shows up and like pays the bills. Capricorn is like the paying the bills side of your house and like protecting the family. Capricorn represents the father, and it represents the father, the economy, the office, the workplace. And why is the father working? To provide the roof over your head, and so that's the axis that was being triggered when Pluto entered Capricorn. And now here we are. We're right around the corner from Pluto exiting Capricorn. And so the chances to me seem very high that we're looking at another housing crash pretty soon. And I was talking to some other friends about this, and our guess was probably within 16 weeks on either side of March 23rd, which puts that's now, right? That's now. So basically anytime between now and July, which I understand is like a large window, but also in the grand scheme of things, it may not be. When it came to 2008, I believe the big crash happened on September 29th. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the date, September 29th of 2008. And then Pluto entered Capricorn in October, I believe. So it was right around the same time, but not the exact same day. So we're not looking for a crash on March 23rd. We're just keeping our eyes peeled to see what trends take place surrounding March 23rd. Is something going to happen before? Is something going to happen after? Well, it gets a little bit more complicated than that because Pluto is actually going retrograde. So Pluto will be in Aquarius. It's exiting Capricorn and entering Aquarius for just from March to June. So March to April, May, June, and it's not even a full 3 months because it enters on March 23rd. On June 11th, it's going to retrograde and go back into Capricorn. And then it's going to go back into Aquarius in January. But what that means is that instead of Pluto just making this easy switch into the next sign, which is Aquarius, it's going to retrograde and do that same thing where it's going to slap us back and forth multiple times. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, the flavor of this kind of crash that I personally expect is not just going to involve the economy and housing in particular, although I would expect that. I would expect housing in particular and the economy in general to be affected, but Aquarius governs technology and it governs unexpected disasters, including natural disasters. It governs like earthquakes, fires, tornadoes, volcanoes, all of that kind of stuff. So as Pluto enters the sign of Aquarius, we may be looking at a heightened risk for natural disasters involving weather and like earth events. We may be looking at disruptions with our technology and massive shifts with our technology. Of course, we're already seeing that. I think it's really been interesting. I mean, for me, we've been talking about artificial intelligence for a while now, but just in the past, I would say 2 months, artificial intelligence has been, showing up in my awareness almost daily. I'm getting ads for artificial intelligence services for businesses. I actually do pay for one artificial intelligence service to analyze YouTube. I don't really get it, but it's cool, whatever. I'm like looking at it. And I have a friend who's going to use artificial intelligence to help her write a book. My husband is a writer, and so he's using AI to generate book covers for the books that he's writing. And I think we're going to see a massive increase in artificial intelligence. Anyway, I'm sorry. This was supposed to be the brief overview. So Pluto's entering Aquarius and then exiting Aquarius and coming back into Capricorn. And so we have a lot of Pluto energy going on this year, like much more than you would see in a typical 20-year period. Okay. The last time that we had this kind of thing, again, was in 2008. So that's been, a good almost 15 years. And then once this is done, Pluto will be in Aquarius for a full 20 years. So Pluto typically spends, 10 to 20 years in a sign at a time. And so it's a little unusual to be spending just a little 3-month period, like going into one sign and then retrograding back and then going forward again. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Now, the next things, that's taking place in March. And smack dab in the middle of Pluto in Aquarius for this year, we're having our next eclipse portal. Okay, so remember, during an eclipse portal, eclipses always come in sets of 2 or 3. And what happens is the sun and the moon align. And first, they're exactly right on top of each other, basically. And so they block each other out, and then they're and then the earth comes in between them to block. Anyway, when that happens, when the sun and moon are like fully aligned to the point that you have a solar eclipse, which always aligns with a new moon, okay? And so when you have a new moon, am I saying this correctly? Okay. But astrologically speaking, whatever's going on in that section of the chart, both the sun and the moon are there. So it's a time to plant new seeds, start something new in your life. And then during the eclipse, all lunar eclipses happen during a full moon. And that's as far apart as the sun and moon can get from each other. And so that is the time when you're able to let things go. You can look within, see what emotional stuff is going on, and let things go. So during that time, everyone on the whole earth has all of their chakras unzipped. All of our energy fields are wide open. We're receiving these divine downloads. And this is true for everybody. You have been experiencing this multiple times a year for your whole life, and you just didn't even know. But if you went back through all of the big events of your life, I bet you would find that many major events of your life did indeed coincide with these eclipse portals, these 2-week periods between eclipses. So that is something to be preparing for. April is our next eclipse window. It's going to start on, I think, April 20th and then close on May 5th or 6th, depending on your time zone. And then our next set of eclipses is going to be taking place in October. So we have 2 eclipse portals this year. So we're going to make them count, guys. It's a great time to actively release the energy that your spirit is done with and welcome in the stuff that you're ready for. So again, this is something that everybody already deals with, and you've already been through a bunch of them. Like however old you are, multiply that by 2 or 3, and that's how many you've already been through. And you just didn't even know, right? But Now you know, so you can kind of prepare for it. Now, the next big thing that I have my eyes on, okay, on March the 12th, Jupiter will be exact Chiron, which only happens every 12 years. Chiron is on a 49-year cycle. Jupiter is on a 12-year cycle. The short version of what this means is we're going to experience a massive expansion in our sense of personal woundedness, and on a societal level, societal woundedness may come to a head on or around that time. So this is a lot happening in March and then in April, right? As far as Chiron, I mean, that's woundedness. Jupiter will be in Aries. This is dealing with the physical body. Chiron is in Aries too, of course. So wounds of the physical body that are really going to be drawing a lot of attention. And then Pluto going back and forth about the economy and technology. So I don't know, that's just really interesting. And then on June the 1st, Jupiter will be conjunct the true node, which again does not happen very often. So what we can expect with that, Jupiter expands everything that it touches. The true node is like kind of like the destiny of everybody on the planet right now. It's kind of like, where are we all headed right now? And so right now it's in Taurus. Taurus deals with money and the economy and things that we think are fixed and stable, like the earth. But, you know, the earth is not always that stable. Like thinking of earthquakes and volcanoes and all of the stuff that Aquarius governs. It's going to be really interesting to have Jupiter conjunct that true node while Pluto is still in Aquarius and just nearing its entrance back into Capricorn. So we'll just have to see for ourselves how that plays out with our national focus on money and the economy. You know, there's a lot of people that are nervous about a shift to total digital currency and stuff like that. Will we see that this year? I don't know, but we'll just have to see what happens. I don't know. What else is happening in the first half of the year or so? Let's see, is technically not in the first half of the year, but just barely not. On July 17th, we're going to be shifting out of the Scorpio-Taurus axis and into the Libra-Aries axis. And so I've talked a lot about the Scorpio-Taurus axis because we've had a bunch of eclipse portals that have dealt with it. And the Scorpio-Taurus axis, I call it the zombie apocalypse because Scorpio deals with the hidden stuff and like the zombies, like the skeletons in the closet, okay? Scorpio is the skeletons in your closet and Taurus is what comes to life. And so when you have all this stuff going on in the Scorpio-Taurus axis, the skeletons in the closet come to life. It's the zombie apocalypse. So all of the dark stuff within your own soul starts making its way forward so that you can process it. And a story coming into my mind is just that I have a good friend that works in community management, which is high in customer service. And so she's always dealing with unhappy customers because, you know, you can't paint your door this color. And like the HOA says I have to cut down my weeds, but I don't want to cut down my weeds. And that guy keeps parking in front of my house. Can you please do something about it? Anyway, it's always been like that. But she has been reporting that people are out of control right now. Like they are so mean that it is astonishing. And her employees cry and it's a mess. But I think I've noticed this too. I feel like people are generally much more on edge than they used to be, you know, 3 years ago before all of the events of 2020. And so that's just one manifestation of it. People's skeletons coming out of the closet, the zombie apocalypse, the stresses that we're keeping inside are coming out of us and taking a physical form. How, on a personal level, are your internal stresses taking physical form? How are your hidden stuff, how are your hidden things taking physical form, right? So that's just something to be thinking about and keeping your eye on. But you know, we still have another 6 months of this. We've been at it for a full year. We have another 6 months. Another aspect of this is the secrets of corporations coming into play. And I should just do a whole separate video about this, but I have a great article that I've kept up in my in my tabs for months because I'm like, I have to do a video about this. It's called A Sleuth's Guide to the Coming Wave of Corporate Fraud. Mischief is cyclical. It is bred in good times and uncovered in bad times. And this is an article by The Economist. And it just kind of chronicles past financial crises and how during these financial crises, all of a sudden, you get to see how all these different companies were fudging on their books. And it was, they could keep doing it while the times were good and people were throwing money hither and yon. But as soon as times got hard and people stopped throwing money around, then all the secrets came forward. And so I think we're going to see more of that in the future. And I think the Twitter takeover has been a really interesting thing to watch from the Scorpio Taurus axis perspective. But always there's always just a lot. If you're looking for how these nodes affect the planet, you can always find plenty to talk about. And these nodes are shifting in July. July 17th is when we're going to be shifting into the Libra Aries axis. And this is a really interesting one to me in particular, because, we just finished the Pluto return. 2022 was really marked by the Pluto return, which was when Pluto returned to the exact same spot that it was in the sky when 1776, the July 4th signing of the Declaration of Independence took place. And past Pluto returns for other nations have typically involved civil war. That's just how it has been, civil war or invasion. There's been one time that I found where they had like an economic revival, but it also involved a lot of, it was the Industrial Revolution for Great Britain. And so they had the massive upheaval of all sorts of industries becoming obsolete as new industries were taking their place. And of course, we all know now the Industrial Revolution was like extremely dangerous, and like lots of people died in the unsafe working conditions, forcing 4-year-olds to work and get their fingers cut off in these dangerous looms and stuff. Like, danger, it wasn't all fun and games, that's what I'm saying. Like, so they had no civil war, that's great, but like it wasn't all fun and games how they had this massive shift and upheaval in such a short period of time with that particular Pluto return. So are we looking at possible civil war? Like, I feel like the stars indicate it's a possibility, just looking at patterns from past Pluto returns, it just looks like a possibility. And a lot of things are possible, so I don't know, a lot of things are possible. But what's interesting about having the Libra Aries axis coincide with this is that Libra is all about getting along, harmony, friendship, relationships, marriage, partnerships, alliances. On a global level, it's about alliances. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have Aries, which is self-centered. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Self-care is really critical, but Libra is kind of known for being willing to bend over backwards to serve others and like to preserve the peace. And Aries does not typically do that. Aries just knows that it has to put itself first. Like, you got to put your oxygen mask on yourself first, and Aries energy really gets that. Aries energy is also, it tends to be combative and proactive. And when it sees a problem, it can tend to want to fight about it. It doesn't shy away from a fight, and Libra does. And so what's going to happen is we're going to shift into this nodal path where everybody's moving away from Libra and towards Aries. So we're moving away from making sacrifices so we can all get along, and towards every man for himself, put your own oxygen mask on and don't worry about those other people till you're all set. Again, pros and cons, right? But when I look at that, I think, will this nodal path be the hallmark of a societal shift where as a whole people say, you know what, I'm not willing to sacrifice for my neighbors, like every man for himself. And when I say that, like sacrifice for my neighbors, you could look at it in a lot of ways, but I even just mean like just being kind to your neighbors. I read a thing about Civil War, and this was probably a year ago. And they were talking about how in the American Civil War, of course, there was a North and a South, and like there were some dissenters on both sides, but overwhelmingly, like Northerners felt one way, Southerners felt another way, and that was how it was. But when it comes to now, everybody is so mixed up. I just mean like literally, like my own biological family. Like I have like one sibling in one state, another sibling in another state. I'm in this state. I have relatives all over the place. Um, Families are split up everywhere. People don't live where they grew up. There's not really a cohesive culture of place anymore. And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have states fight against states, because really like think about your own neighborhood, think about your own neighbors. Do you share the same values and politics and religion and culture as your neighbors? Maybe you do, but I'll say where I grew up, that was just not the case, and I think there's a lot of places in America like that, where the people that literally live in the homes next to you may not agree with you on some really key stuff. And if it came to it, would you all be on the same side in a conflict? And so when I think about the fragmented nature of American society today and the shift into this Libra Aries axis, I'm just sitting there thinking, how many people see what's going on in politics and in culture, and they find it deeply disturbing. And I mean, on both sides of the political aisle, literally everybody right now has reasons to look at the world and feel disturbed by it, whatever perspective they're coming from, right? But to a large extent, many people are not acting on that. We say this is very disturbing, but we're not like taking our pitchforks to City Hall about it. Will that shift from Libra to Aries, that Libra to Aries nodal axis, will it encourage people to kind of give up on getting along? And I don't know. I mean, like that is the energy of that axis. That the energy of that axis is to stop worrying so much about getting along with people and every man for himself. Don't shy away from the conflict. I think we're going to see a lot more willingness to engage in conflict. And so that doesn't mean, it can mean a lot of things, right? It can mean things get really heated on Twitter, right? And it can also mean other things. So we're just going to have to see what shows up. But what else is interesting, of course, is that Jupiter is in Aries, and Jupiter massively expands wherever it is, the energy that it's at. And so for Jupiter to be in Aries as well is going to massively expand the focus on the physical body, on conflict, on physical conflict, on injuries. That's all Aries stuff. Jupiter will be in there too. Chiron is there too. And Chiron deals with wounding. So I'm just like, there's a lot going on here of like the node, the other word for these nodes is called the nodes of destiny. Like the node of destiny is in the house that governs physical injury and like actual fighting with your physical body. And Jupiter's in there and Chiron is in there. And that just is going to massively expand the wounding concept with physical bodies. Anyway, it can all be symbolic, of course it can. So there's really no need to jump to conclusions, but it's just going to be an energy that we're going to keep our eye on. We're not going to get weird about it, but we're going to keep our eye on it and see how it plays out. Okay, so these are some of the energies that we're looking forward to as we face the year. So there you go. Just a little overview of 2023, the first half, part 1, and we'll dig into more as it comes. But thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you more later. Bye, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also join my Facebook group, Intuitive Healing with Ali Doucette. Okay, see you later.